Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the new rules for Star Wars Legion in our first installment of the rules update preview. AMG is going to be dropping multiple more articles about all of these rules that are being changed, and I know a lot of people are worried. I was definitely worried. I feel a little bit better after seeing this, but this is just the first of 4 total articles. So we're going to talk about this first article. It kind of helps set the stage on what to expect. I think it went a long way towards raising some concerns initially, but also kind of easing some concerns as well. So, of course, I want to get your feedback as well. So I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section and also in our Discord. All of that is down below. Check the video description for some great links. Also, a little word from our sponsor, Luxury Playstyle. Make sure you head over to luxuryplaystyle.com. Check out those amazing Full Metal tokens compatible with Legion. Also, they have tokens compatible with X-Wing, Magic the Gathering, all kinds of great stuff. You're going to save 15% if you use code Crabbok VIP. Plus, we got some all-new tokens that are out now, too. So get your orders in, and they make great stocking stuffers and also great prize support. So let your friends and family know what you're interested in this year and give them that code so they can save 15% as well. Also, we are still doing the giveaways. We've got the big lightsaber giveaway as well as the 12 Days of Life Day. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos to enter to win any of those. So make sure you are standing by. All right, so with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into these rules. So if you head over to atomicmassgames.com, there is a Star Wars Legion section there, and if you scroll down to the Legion transmissions, you're going to see articles like this, and if you scroll down further, you get like all of the other articles. So if you're watching this in the farther future, you're probably going to see some other ones before this, but if you're watching it, if you're watching it on the 13th or maybe even the 14th, this is what you'll see. Again, there's going to be more articles coming, so you're going to go to the same place to get all of the articles. But it kind of starts out with them talking about the core rulebook and the rules reference guide. They're basically going to be printing a new rulebook. And I think this is a good idea. The game's been out for a while, and even in other games, we've seen similar things happen. X-Wing eventually got a reprinted rule book when the Force Awakens core set came out, and then of course they got another one with 2.0 and then 2.5 and all that other stuff. But like every once in a while, you kind of need to take a look at, hey, we've had all these FAQ questions, we've have all this errata, all these rules adjustments that have happened over the years. At a certain point, and this isn't even an Atomic Mass Games restricted thing. This started to happen under FFG. Where you have so many rules changes and erratas and things like that, where there comes a point where you need to kind of reprint a fresh rule book, and so the need for that, I think, was probably bigger than I thought. But apparently AMG said, we need to do this, and that's one of the goals here, is to reprint the core rule book while fixing some problems. And one of those problems was line of sight. Not like it's a complete problem. They haven't completely changed it, but they have changed it. And although I have seen some people say they've completely changed it, I don't think they've completely changed it. I think they've made some adjustments to it, and of course we're going to talk about that. But one of the things they say here in this article that I think is important is they say, now let us be crystal clear. This is not an overhaul of the Legion rules you all know and love. And one more time for safety, this is not an overhaul of the Legion rules you all know and love. Now, of course, it's funny that they say that, because I think depending on the audience or the reader, whoever reads this, depending on how they play and how much they want to react, and I know I have certainly had my fair share of reactions to things. That's kind of one of the things that I do. One could interpret this as a lot of different ways. I'm not going to lie to you. When I first read this, I'm like, wait a second. Why would they have to say this is not an overhaul of the Legion rules that I know and love? Why would they have to put that disclaimer out there unless, of course, this was in fact an overhaul of the Legion rules I know and love, right? So that was one of my first reactions as I was just reading through all of this. But, and again, right now, having only the first article, it's way too early for me to say if this is actually more of an overhaul or less of an overhaul. To me, it looks like it's less of an overhaul and more of maybe a clarification or an ironing out, time to maybe a tune-up. Because again, you've got so many corner cases, FAQs, rules, adjustments, and fine-tunements that happen over the years that, granted, that's not exactly what's happening here. They're changing a few things, but a great example is, if we're talking about line of sight, that you didn't have in the core rulebook was the silhouette tool. And they're going to talk about that a little bit here. The line of sight, basically, this is kind of an excerpt, right? They're going to talk about that silhouette tool. And I want to scroll down a little bit, and they want to clarify this and make it easier for players to determine whether what their miniatures can and cannot see. And now there are 2 standard silhouettes for all trooper miniatures. Now, in the past, we used to just have a silhouette tool for small base trooper miniatures, but now all troopers are going to be able to use a silhouette tool. Now, this is interesting to me because there's a different type of silhouette tool for a small base trooper, and there's another type of silhouette tool for a notched base trooper. Now, what is a notched base trooper? So, like, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the mortar troopers and the Mark IIs. Basically your rebel veterans have their little detachment guy, and then of course your shore troopers have their detachment guy. So those have notches in them. Those are notched based troopers that weren't using a small base before. So that was certainly a thing. You also have other notched based units that have trooper in the keyword, like, for example, an E-Web or an FD turret or a Dewback, right, or a Tauntaun. Those are all creature troopers also count, right? So it looks like they're all going to be using this. Now, I initially had some confusion on this because the silhouette, the way the silhouette used to work, the little white dot at the top was kind of where you used to draw your line of sight. It used to be like from the center towards wherever. And now they're saying if any part of the silhouette tool can see any part of the other silhouette, then that's going to mean you have line of sight. So basically, if I can have from like this corner can see your foot, I still have line of sight. So that's just more of a clarity thing, and they're working on putting silhouettes on everything. Of course, not everything's going to have a silhouette tool. Vehicles are still going to have a silhouette, but there's no tool for it because every vehicle is going to be slightly different. We're going to talk about vehicle silhouettes in a little bit, but this graphic I think is a little confusing, and I don't particularly like it because it confused me. Because first off, none of these are oriented properly. All right, so when you go to read it a little bit further, it's going to talk about, you take that little white notch. Of course, that white notch already was there. There's a lot of silhouette tools that already exist, and they have a little notch at the top. So now they're saying you just flip it over. The white notch touches the base, and you use the width of the base, but the height of the silhouette tool. Now this is about the width of a base anyway, so you can kind of put it behind somebody. But that's how a trooper's silhouette is going to work. It's going to be the height of the silhouette tool, the width of the base. I got really confused when I saw the notched-based trooper silhouette, and I actually posted about this on social media, and because I'm like, okay, well, is it sideways? Why? Like, what's up with it? And what's up with the little wings? Like, what are we supposed to do with the little wings? And I don't think the wings really serve any purpose other than maybe just a handle or something like that, because the wings aren't really part of the silhouette. The silhouette's really just about the height. That's the important part. So the notched-based silhouette trooper, or the notched-based trooper silhouette, rather, the top one, is sideways. So it should actually be, it's like a longer silhouette. So in short, let me summarize this. Small base troopers seem to have about the same silhouette, although they didn't give us exact dimensions on this. But the notched base troopers are going to have a much taller silhouette. The problem is, the thing that seems a little counterintuitive for a lot of folks is that all notched base troopers are going to be about like 150% the height silhouette of like what a normal trooper would be. So some of these notch-based troopers are kind of low to the ground. Like the Mark IIs they're kind of leaning over, so they're already shorter than most other troopers. But now they're like twice as high as they would have been if you line this up next to them. And so we had a big discussion about this going on in the Discord yesterday. There was some graphics thrown around. Of course, if you want to go over there and look, you can probably do that. But there is definitely some wiggle room in here. Now, I think the reason for this is just like, look, this is just a one-size-fits-all solution for all notched-based troopers, because some of the notched-based troopers are much taller. The FD turret is pretty tall. Tauntauns are pretty tall. Mortars are kind of short, and Mark IIs are kind of short. So that's kind of the idea. Now, not all notched bases are troopers. Like speeder bikes aren't troopers; those are vehicles. They're going to use their own system. So vehicles. Let me see. Is it on here? Vehicles is an interesting one. Vehicles don't have a silhouette tool, but they are going to have a silhouette, and this is going to be very interesting for vehicles. First off, vehicles are, we're going to have to decide about those. They say to decide at the beginning of the game. I feel like that can be, that needs to be standardized, because I don't like the idea of just deciding at the beginning of the game. I think you need to decide permanently, because there's only so many vehicles. We can come up with a solution for every vehicle. Basically, the silhouette of a vehicle is the entire width of the base. So if you're a big round base, you're going to have a big round cylinder base, even if your vehicle, like the snow speeder, for example, doesn't touch all of the base, but now, of course, its silhouette is going to be the entire width of the base. Of course, that's going to be better or worse for certain units, and I understand it, because it's just the cleanest solution. But on top of that, it's only going to go up to the top of the vehicle's hull. And that specifically doesn't include certain things like a driver or a pilot. Like you think of the Gav tank, where you got the guy's head sticking out and you got the gunner on top with the pintle. Doesn't count for that. It just counts for the top of like the armor or the hull. And so there's a very specific points. Like speeder bikes actually have a pretty low silhouette, because the rider on top you don't include. The handlebars on top you probably don't include, because it's certainly the way it's written. It sounds like you don't include those antennas, things like that. You're not going to include. The spider droid, I think, was a big use case for this one. The spider droid has this giant, tall antenna. You're not going to have to worry about that antenna. You just do it at the top of like the dome portion, so you have a much smaller silhouette. Now, this is a double-edged sword for a lot of things. This means you're not going to be able to see over a lot of terrain. This means you might have to move and put yourself at a little more risk. But this also means you're less likely to get shot from people far away. So, you have a lower profile. That in itself is a double-edged sword. It's good and bad in both cases. So, but I think that's... I don't really see that being something that you need to really discuss at the beginning of the match. I feel like there will be certain community things. I'll be really annoyed if, like, for example, everybody decides, okay, the AAT, all right, the AAT, like, since there's armor on top of the gun and on the back, right, in the center, that to me seems like that's the highest point of the hull, because there's an armored portion that happens to hold that gun turret. But that's, the back top area is the highest point. So to me, that's where the silhouette stops. Now, obviously, if you swing the gun tube to the left or the right, you posed it that way and it extends past the edge of the base, well, that's not going to count as the silhouette. So if you're like, oh, I can see the tip of his gun tube, I'm like, yeah, but it's extending beyond the ring of the silhouette, you're fine. But I'm going to be really annoyed if that's what everybody agrees on, and then we show up to a tournament and somebody's like, well, I don't agree on that, and it says we decided at the beginning of the game, so now the silhouette for the AAT is much smaller because this is where the hull is. I'm like, a vehicle's hull to me doesn't sound like it's something that's up for debate. Like the hull is the hull, unless people are like modding their units, unless you're like modding for advantage. But I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion on a hull. The only thing I can maybe think of that really would be up for debate is if somebody built an AT-ST in a really weird pose. Like if you built a chicken walker like upside down so that it's like ultra low or something like that, that might be something you have to be like, look, you clearly, this thing should have a cylinder of about, X height or something like that. And maybe that's just something that they can do at some point and come up with, like, yes, this is, for tournament reasons or whatever, this is the profile, this is the shooting kind of cylinder for this or whatever. But at least as of right now, they're just saying, look, you guys need to agree. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it will be probably problematic. And maybe that'll go into tournament regulations at some point. Or like, look, for home games, you have to agree, but if you're playing in a tournament, you're not going to be able to mod for advantage. This is the cylinder for this. So, you can make it look goofy if you want, but it's still going to be able to shoot at this height and get shot back at this height. or something like that. And I think that I think they're kind of paving the way for that. Although for casual home games, whatever you agree with your opponent, I think that always goes without saying. So just agree for what you want. So yeah, like this bottom part, players should discuss vehicle silhouettes before the game begins. Okay, yeah. I mean, maybe that's just something you're going to have to do for right now, because again, a rule book has to be good for casual players and for tournament players. So like maybe this line is more something that really is going to apply more to casual games, and then tournament regulations will be like, no, the silhouettes are fixed and they are exact. Maybe that will be the case. Again, there's more rules coming. So while some of this might not make perfect sense, there's more coming. Let's talk about cover. Cover's interesting here, and I wonder if some of this will get changed. Basically, I think there's some confusion with the article, or at least it's a good opportunity to talk about confusion, because this is there's this whole 50% rule, and let's see. The relationship between silhouettes and cover has also been revisited. A unit now has cover if half or more. Here's this: half or more of its miniatures are obscured. There's no longer a need to see how much of a silhouette is obscured. Well, this has got a lot of people saying, what? All right, so look, there really was never a need to see how much of a silhouette was obscured during gameplay, right? And it's one of the most common mistakes people have when they play. I certainly did it when I was brand new to the game as well. People would do it all the time. It's like, oh yeah, like, well, the barricade's only blocking his leg, so he doesn't get cover because not 50% of the miniature is getting, is behind cover. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Never mattered. Okay? You decide at the beginning of the game what pieces give cover, whether it's to troopers or to vehicles. And the guiding principle has always been, if a piece of terrain can obscure 50% of the miniatures. That's why barricades were always granted to give, and that's in the rules, barricades always give heavy cover to troopers. But they never gave heavy cover to vehicles, because vehicles like you have the ATRT and stuff like that were taller, and so it didn't hit that 50% mark. So you go around to all the things like, all right, what about this building here? Is that going to give cover to an ATST? Oh, you know what? It is tall enough. This is what you decide at the beginning of the game. You say, yes, this building's tall enough, so this building's eligible to give cover to even the largest of vehicles and stuff like that. And you look at this boulder, that boulder is not quite big enough, so that boulder won't give cover to the vehicles in our game because it doesn't, it's not big enough. That's where you have the discussion, but you never have to have that discussion in the middle of the game, because let's say that big building that you said, oh yeah, it can cover half the mini. Well, my ATST is walking up, maybe only 1 foot is behind it, when you're shooting, it still gets heavy cover because we determined that building gives heavy cover to this vehicle, and all it has to be is obscured. Now, there were some other things too. You'd use the line method and all of that other stuff too. But at the end of the day, if it determines if it is obscured, it didn't matter if it was 50% or not. And again, there's some more finesse because you have to like trace the line if the line goes through it or whatever, and there's all of that. Well, they're simplifying all of that. But this whole thing about no longer to see how much of a silhouette is obscured, this is, I think, here where they're saying this is they're talking about pre-match discussion. You don't have to do that anymore. So this is an interesting thing, because now basically anytime you're obscured at all, even if it's just a teeny little bit, you're getting the cover. What you do have to determine is what gives light cover and what gives heavy cover. I won't be surprised if one of the follow-up articles that we see is dealing with terrain. That's my prediction from this video, because so much of this is talking about terrain. I think that's an important thing. So, you're determining the number of obscured miniatures, so it doesn't matter how much of the miniature is obscured. Again, whether it's a big vehicle, little troopers, whatever. If half or more are blocked, then they get the appropriate cover. Now, they also talk about if there are mixed cover. So, and this is an interesting thing here. So if we look at this, it says if a miniature and the defending unit are obscured by terrain that provides light cover and some terrain that provides heavy cover. If more than half of the obscured miniatures are obscured by terrain that provides heavy cover, the defending unit has heavy cover. Otherwise, the unit has light cover. The interesting thing here is it says more than half here, right? So in a 2-unit, like in a strike team, for example, you could never have more than half if it was a mix. It would either be 100% or nothing. So I wonder if this is meant to just be half. But according to the way it says right now, if you're in mixed cover, you have to have more than half of the number of minis. So in a 5-person unit, you'd have to have 3 behind heavy cover and 2 behind light cover to get heavy cover. And that's if you have mixed cover. So that's an interesting thing. But after reading all of this, it definitely looks like barricades even can give cover to even the largest vehicle. Like as long as there's a single line on my silhouette that goes through cover to your silhouette, if at least one like blade of grass or something like that is blocking it, you're going to get some cover. Of course, you'll have to say, well, what did we agree to? Did we agree that this blade of grass grants light cover? All right, grass is probably a bad example. Maybe say a leaf on a tree. If we've said that the tree gives light cover and just a tiny little branch of that tree is in the way, you're getting light cover. You know, so that's interesting. Even if you're a giant tank, a barricade's still going to give you heavy cover because we determined that barricades grant heavy cover. Now, some people are probably not going to be crazy about that. Maybe they'll amend it to say, actually, that doesn't work. But that's my takeaway from this so far is that cover is just a lot more streamlined. A lot more shots are going to be having cover applied to them with this rule set, and basically the only way to not get cover is you have to be 100% out in the open if you're a single miniature, or and again for large vehicles, a lot of times at least a portion of the base is behind some kind of cover. Like take a Gav tank. A Gav tank almost always has some kind of cover. It's so big and long. Giggity. That it's always something's always blocking it. There's always something in the way. So that's probably going to be a mixed bag for a lot of these vehicles. Even though you're like, oh, I got this huge silhouette now. I'm like, yeah, but that means you get more stuff to give you cover. Although if you had armor already, cover probably isn't that big of a deal to you. But yes, it's still interesting. It's good against small shots, I guess. If somebody's trying to take a sniper and fish for crits, or if they have an impact 1 weapon, and they're trying to get those in there, then maybe. But yeah, so cover's interesting. Let's keep going down. There's also line of sight, and this is an important one. There were certain nuances of terrain blocking line of sight that were not intuitive for players. Certain placement of miniatures allowed for the sniping of heavy weapons or specific characters from units, and which miniatures a unit can have wounds allocated to them has changed. Wounds may now be allocated to any miniature in a unit, not just the ones that are in the attacker's line of sight. However, you still have to follow certain existing rules. For example, wounded miniatures have to take the wounds first. This initially, again, now this article came out in 2 points. At 2 points. If you read it really early in the day, you would have read that and said, "Oh, strike teams are dead." What I mean by that, if you're a newer player to Legion, there was always this strategy that I hate. I still hate it, and I hope this is in one of the future articles too, the leader rule change, where a sniper strike team, the leader is the sniper, and then you have the other guy, the spotter, or just the extra mini, and you kind of put him totally beyond line of sight. You hide the other guy, here's the leader, and this other guy, he's going to go all the way over there. You can't even see him. See, look, you can't even see my other hand. It's off screen, right? And so where if this guy dies, well, that other guy wasn't eligible for wounds anyway, so then he's still alive no matter how many hits you rolled. And then my leader morphs into the other guy, and and some people say, well, the other guy just picks up the sniper rifle. I'm like, sure, but it's not zeroed for him. He's not trained with the same weapon. He's not authorized for that weapon. Otherwise, he would have had a sniper rifle too. And the other thing is that, while it might make sense for snipers, to me, it makes a lot less sense for other things with that leader rule. like POW comes to mind. Like I remember force choking a POW, and so that's he died. And of course, I think it was before he had 2 health. But even now, it still works. You force choke him once, then he has to take the next wound. The Pathfinder leader, right? He's got other stuff. He's got like Inspire. He's got a special gun, like a really cool leader for Pathfinders. Well, if you are able to kill him first, you're like, oh great. Well, then somebody else morphs into POW, and every time you kill him, somebody else morphs into POW. And so it's really frustrating to have, a different human morph into an alien over and over and over again. Like, it doesn't make sense, and it really breaks the immersion for me. And it's annoying because it completely circumvents like force choke and stuff to like, hey, this is a mini in this unit that has special powers. I want to have Vader go after him. And like, no, you can't. He's immortal. He can never die. So well. Not never, but he can very rarely die because you have to get him down like 7 health or something obscene. No, 6 health, I guess, for POW to finally come off the board. Anyway, I don't like the leader rule, is my point. And at first, I thought this was going to largely help with that. What this actually does is it means that if I've got my whole unit of, let's say I got a Rebel Trooper unit or a Clone Trooper unit, and I've got a Z6 in there, and you're able to kind of angle your shot to where you can only see the Z6. You used to be able to like, oh, all right, well, the Z6 has to die, and nobody else can die since I couldn't see those guys. And they're changing that to where now you can just assign the wounds wherever you want, so you can keep your heavy weapon alive. I think that's a reasonable change. It certainly stops your ability to kind of play it. It makes the game slightly less realistic, but at the same time, it kind of takes away the feels bad scenarios. And one of the problems, and one of the real reasons that I think this rule came up, it wasn't just because, I can use some strategy to take out your high threat weapon, but it's that it led to a situation where all of the movement, when you were moving your unit, you would take so much longer to move your unit because you're like, well, hold on, I have to move them in such a way that everybody is completely blocked off of line of sight, or that the heavy weapon is totally safe, because sometimes people would take a really long time trying to make sure that they couldn't be scoped somewhere. And so now it'll really go a long way towards speeding up gameplay. And so I think that's a reasonable change. I think it's a good change that makes sense, and it's not what I feared. Like, it's not this huge sweeping change. But they did go back and add this additional paragraph here. Additionally, the new rules for which miniatures can suffer wounds from an attack have also been adjusted. Now, when a unit suffers a wound from an attack, if the attacker has line of sight to only some of the miniatures in the defending unit cannot suffer wounds greater than the total wound threshold of miniatures that are in line of sight. Now, this could backfire. This could backfire because this could be problematic. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're playing droids and for some reason you don't have an order token, so you've got AI attack. Now I can maybe like put like a whole unit really close to you and specifically maneuver it so that I have only one guy out in the open. You have to take your attack on this one guy. Well, I guess that wouldn't have changed from how it was before. So maybe it's not going to backfire very much. I guess there's still cases where people can kind of take advantage of that rule, but yeah. But the idea here is that if I go for your strike team, I can't kill the guy behind the wall and your sniper with just one attack. I may still be able to roll a whole bunch of dice at your sniper, but at the end of the day, you can only suffer the one wound. The other guy, and you can choose. Well, it's unclear if you can manually assign a wound to a leader, because if you can, again, normally leader has to suffer wounds last, and so it sounds to me like the sniper strike teams will be slightly less of a problem. But if they're changing this to allow you to kill your leader first, then that dude in the back would still be safe. And so I guess we're going to have to get more information before I make a full judgment on what I think of this rule. But, I mean, to be fair, it makes a little bit of sense. I hope that there's more to it. Because at the end of the day, what I really want is for snipers to have some risk. Like, sniper strike teams are virtually invulnerable. And if I can snipe your sniper and I kill your sniper, I expect him to be dead. I don't want, unless of course you got a medic that can raise him or something like that. But if I kill your sniper, I don't want, oh, well, you just killed one guy, but the sniper is going to morph into this other guy over here. Like, I don't like that, you know? Especially because it's a Mon Calamari sniper if I'm playing Rebels, and that other guy was a human, and all of a sudden now he just changed species in the middle of the game, you know? I mean, like, and again, that's me being a little bit too silly with it, but I don't like that rule. I never have, because it allows you to have reward without any risk. And I think if you're going to put your sniper out there to take shots, then you have to be vulnerable to get shot in return. That's the name of the game. You shouldn't be able to shoot, fire at somebody at range 5 with Pierce and be invulnerable. Like, I don't like that. Although, whatever they do with all of these changes, I think at the end of the day, the winners are going to be the Separatist snipers. Because if they do change the leader rule and they do make it like, oh, it's dangerous to snipe now because you're vulnerable to counterfire, I feel like the shields on the Separatist snipers are going to put them in a pretty good spot to still have a pretty good amount of relative protection, since in a lot of cases one of the biggest threats to snipers are other snipers, and those shields will definitely help there. And so that's that's pretty much it for this opening series of rules. I wanted to kind of bring it to you, talk about it. There's going to be more. I think it's pretty cool that they're not going super crazy. They're doing some things that kind of make sense. Some things are a little bit different, but I understand why. Like, honestly, one of my biggest complaints with this whole thing is that they put these in the article and none of them are oriented correctly. If the white notch is supposed to be on the bottom, like, and it's a silly thing to complain about, right? Is it just had me confused for like an hour. I was like scratching my head. I'm like, wait, am I supposed to do the silhouette like long ways? Because usually the notch bases are longer. So I thought, but there's more rules coming. Hopefully they do something about the leader rule, and they come up with a good way to just balance the risk versus reward with sniper strike teams, and anybody who's gonna put themselves in a place where they can throw dice on you, they should also be vulnerable to some counterfire. I mean, having heavy cover helps and everything, but if you're just completely invulnerable, I have a problem with that. I don't know. I'm curious what other changes they're going to do. I want to hear it from you guys, what you think, and if you think grappling hooks has still got an important role to play in the futures. I do think terrain is going to be one of the things they talk about, especially with all the cover stuff. So we'll have to see how that works. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. But I have one more thing. We have the Life Day winner today, and today's winner is going to win a lat for Star Wars Legion. That's right, we do cool giveaways on this channel. So today's winner is, congratulations, Travis Green. You have just won a lat, so shoot me an email at mailcrabbok@gmail.com, and I'll get your information. We'll get you squared away. To everybody else, there's plenty more chances to win. Anything that doesn't get claimed from 12 Days of Life Day rolls over into Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, thank you to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this channel possible. Thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you soon. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. So say we all. Party on, dudes, and Hakuna Matata.